So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So nice to see everybody here. I was just pausing a moment there as the room filled up. We've got a lot of people on the call today. This is the English webinar about Amplified Change's opportunity round that's just opened. We're also running a similar webinar this afternoon for those that speak French or would prefer to join in French. And my colleague is just going to say that out loud in French in case anybody finds themselves in the wrong place.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. C'est juste pour dire que si vous voulez participer au webinaire en français, ça serait à 14 heures, heure du Royaume-Uni, cet après-midi. Je vais mettre le lien pour l'enregistrement dans le chat maintenant.
Okay, so the rest of the webinar will be fully in English. Just to mention also that the webinar is being recorded and we will put that on our website very soon. So you can always go back and listen again to pieces, or if you're struggling with connections, then you can always find where you got to and listen to what you missed. Thank you everybody for joining. Really appreciate you being here and taking the time to listen to this webinar. We hope it will be informative and help you with your application to Amplify Change, at least if not to see if you are eligible to apply, nothing else. So we have a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to be working through. I'm going to be talking. My name is Liz Tremler. I'm the head of grant making at Amplify Change, and my colleague Hannah.
Hi everyone, lovely to virtually meet you all. Yes, I'm Hannah, I'm a grants manager at Amplify Change, and I'll be sharing this presentation with Liz.
So I think without further ado, we'll move through the slides. We have a Q&A open for people to ask questions. We urge you to write your questions in there. There's not going to, unfortunately, due to the numbers, we're not going to be able to have a sort of direct interaction, but we'll sort of gather up the questions at the end and try and answer them as best we can. If you have questions specific to your particular application, then I'd urge you to reach out to inquire@amplifychange.org and we'll be able to get back to you hopefully directly. And I'd urge you to do that sooner rather than later because things will get busy towards the end of the funding round. So we've just entitled this session Unlocking Opportunities, since the name of the funding round is called the Opportunity Grant. And these are grants that are really aimed at small civil society organisations, and we'll talk more about that later. The next slide, please. Just to run through a little bit the outline of the session today. Hannah's going to talk a little bit, just a sort of welcoming. We'll talk a little bit more about what the opportunity grant is and what we're expecting to see coming through. We'll touch on the eligibility criteria and then go into the sort of application process in a little bit more details and give some advice about what a strong application would look like. And then we've got some additional resources we'd like to share with you. And then we have the Q&A session. So I'll hand over to Hannah for the next slide. Thanks, Hannah.
Great, thanks Liz. If you could pull forward, Katie. Great, so as Liz mentioned, what we're hoping to do in this webinar is overall explain the purpose of the Opportunity Grant, help all of you as best as we can understand the eligibility and application process. We're going to work through some tips for submitting a strong proposal, and we hope to be able to answer as many of your questions live at the end of the webinar in the Q&A as possible. As Liz mentioned, please do continue posting them in the Q&A box from now or as they arise. And we also have some colleagues on the call who may be able to offer type responses to that. Next slide, please, Katie. Great, so a little bit about us to those who don't know us and a refresher for those who do. So we are Amplify Change. We are a bilingual, and that's French and English, challenge fund who supports local civil society organisations who advocate for sexual reproductive health and rights. As Amplify Change, we have our bold ambition to be a global leader in building stronger and more inclusive movements by effectively supporting and amplifying the voices of those who are best placed to lead the change. Just quickly on our vision here. So Amplify Change's vision is the full attainment of sexual and reproductive health and rights for all, including women and girls, youth, and vulnerable and marginalized populations. And we as Amplify Change believe that this can only be achieved through building a stronger civil society with diverse organizations who are resilient and work together to form these movements for change. So we move briefly onto understanding the opportunity grant. So you'll see highlighted here at the top, we have 4 grant types. This is our opportunity grant that is opening. What we are offering in this round is up to 75,000 GBP. So that's British pounds over a duration of 1.5 to 3 years. So that top end amount, 75,000, if you're applying for 3 years, it's 75,000. 1.5 years, it's 75,000. That remains consistent. And within this opportunity round, what we're looking to do is support smaller groups and new entrants to SRHR advocacy. We're looking at enabling local advocates to address new and emerging priorities. And to make everyone aware, this is our funding round that is available to non-registered groups. If it is illegal, challenging, etc., to register for any of the issues that you're working on, we will accept applications from those who are not registered in this funding round. At Amplify Change, we are more than a fund, so as well as offering grants, as I said, we're a challenge fund, so we accept applications on a competitive basis in scheduled funding rounds throughout the year. To let or make everyone aware, we are expecting this to be a very competitive round. We're expecting a large volume of applications. So we're hoping that this webinar is useful for some tips and mainly understanding eligibility. At Amplify Change also, we offer organizational strengthening to our grantee partners. Through this, we support our organizations to sustain and grow. And we do that through a number of ways, but offering targeted organizational strengthening support and flexible funding. We also have another work stream, called Knowledge for Advocacy, where as Amplify Change, we share evidence and knowledge from our partners and position them as experts, ensuring that their voices and experiences are heard at all levels of the SRHR community. Great, thanks, Katie. So we have 5 priority areas at Amplify Change. These are you'll see all of these on our website, but briefly, we work on eliminating gender-based violence, challenging stigma and discrimination, increased access to reproductive and sexual health, increasing safe abortion choices, and improving the sexual health of young people. We accept applications across the broad spectrum of SRHR. These are our priority areas. But if you're working on any other intersection, if you're working on menstrual health, if you're working on the intersection of mental health and SRHR, we fund projects on using pleasure-based approaches. We work with sex workers, we work on LGBT rights. All of these fall within not just our priority areas, but across the broad spectrum of SRH in which we fund. What we thought might be useful is offering some examples of some current and previous projects and initiatives that we have funded as opportunity grants at Amplify Change. So I'm not going to read these out, but we're going to just leave these here for a moment just for you to take a look at these 2 examples. One working on safe abortion and one working on comprehensive sexuality education. We'll just give you a minute to take a look at these. Great, and then I'm going to pass back to Liz.
Thanks, Hannah. Great. We're going to talk a little bit about eligibility criteria at the moment. I've just seen a note, a comment in the chat there that these slides, this session is being recorded, and it will be put on our website, both this English session and the Francophone session, hopefully by tomorrow or the next day, probably at the latest. So we would endeavour to make this available to everybody as soon as we can. Thank you. So onto the eligibility criteria. Most importantly, who can apply. We're really looking for this funding to be going towards civil society organisations, those that are doing work on sexual reproductive health and rights or seeking to do that work, particularly, especially with a focus on advocacy. We require that the organisations we're supporting are based in one of the eligible countries, and you can find the list of those eligible countries on the AmplifyChange website, and we'll share those links later on. But broadly speaking, Africa, South Asia, and then some of the countries in the Middle East. So once you ascertain that you're in the right geography for this grant, we are asking that the organisation is legally registered with a bank account in the organisation's name. That's one route. You can also, as Hannah mentioned earlier, we are accepting applications from unregistered organisations, and that certainly applies to organisations where it isn't a government requirement to receive foreign funding to be registered. If you're in a country where there is a government requirement, I'm thinking particularly India, Bangladesh, you may not be able to receive foreign funding if you are not registered, and that unfortunately is something that we can't overcome. So just a note to those in India and Bangladesh. So if you're unregistered, we'd be looking to help you either hopefully be able to register and open a bank account as part of the grant, and those costs can be added into the budget, or we'll help. We hope that you will be able to find a fiscal host organisation that can help you manage the grant funds, or we potentially could help with that. But it's always best if you can come with an organisation that you've already spoken to and have some experience of working with before. We're looking for organisations to have an average annual expenditure over the past 2 years of less than £200,000. That helps us target the kind of type of organisations that we're seeking to fund in this funding round. And there's a calculation there to show you what we mean by that average. We ask in the application form for you to submit some kind of balance sheet. It doesn't have to be an audited account. It can be something just to show your income and your expenditure within your organisation, and something that we could potentially verify through reference letters or other ways were you to be successful for this grant. So not looking for organisations that are larger than an average annual expenditure of £200,000. Thanks. Just wanted to touch here a little bit on some of the common reasons for ineligibility. So we do, once we receive all of the applications, we do an initial scan, and these are reasons why we find that organisations still applying for. So if you're based in the global north, that's to say not one of the eligible countries, then you would be disallowed. That wouldn't get through. There is some possibility of some technical assistance from an organisation that might be located in the global north, but that's not expected to be a large part of the budget, and certainly not the lead organisation. If there is a strong focus on service delivery or really any component of service delivery, we're not really able, we're unable to fund that. We cannot fund service delivery, unfortunately. I know that presents a difficult situation at the moment. If you've got direct questions about that, I would urge you to come to the inquire email or put it in the chat, the Q&A, and we can talk about that later. Yeah, any proposals that are not aligned with a strong SRHR advocacy focus are also considered to be ineligible. And anybody who's previously been funded and failed to comply with our grant terms may not be eligible either. Finally, applicants that do not use the AmplifyChange templates or did not complete all of the documents required can be considered to be ineligible. So we'll talk a little bit about what's required, what you need to submit alongside your application form. But it's really important that you use the templates. You're going to ask you for a budget and a work plan, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. If you're an organisation that do not meet the financial eligibility, that's to say perhaps you have an average annual expenditure of over 200,000, then you would be considered to be ineligible by AmplifyChange for this round. We'd be expecting you perhaps to apply for one of the other grants. Please look on the website. There's a much more detail about the eligibility criteria. Please do read that, in detail and take note there. Okay. So I'm going to hand back to Hannah now to take us through this stage.
Great, thanks, Liz. So we're just going to go into a little bit of detail around the application process. I've seen quite a few questions about this, so hopefully this will help a little. So first step, if you're not registered on our application portal, please register as soon as possible. We rely on our team in-house to approve all registrations. So if you are registering on the day that this round closes, it's going to be too late. You're not giving yourself enough time. So please register as soon as possible on our portal. Once you have registered, you will need to complete our online application form. And this form includes basic information about your organization, including your address, your contact details. We will ask you some questions. We'll ask you for a project summary. We'll ask you for a problem statement, which gives you a really good opportunity to explain to us what the context is, why your idea is needed, and how it will work. We ask for your objectives. We ask for activities, so how you plan on reaching the end goals and the objectives of your activities of your project. We ask you for your anticipated results. And as Liz mentioned, we also ask for a basic budget and work plan at this stage. And this is in an Excel document. The templates are on the website, but you need to submit this with your application. So with the online form, there is a space for you to upload this document, and it must be there for us to be able to conduct a full review of your application. We emphasize point 3, please submit as early as you can. The deadline for this is the 16th of June. We ask you to, if possible, be submitting before that. We see a huge volume of applications trying to be pushed through on the 16th. And just to make sure it's definitely there, please submit as early as possible. We then will be looking at all the applications in an in-depth review process. And the shortlist then goes through a moderation process before being presented to our board in September 2025. And I believe there's a little more of a detailed timeline we'll go through slightly later in this presentation. Following our reviews, successful and unsuccessful letters will be sent out to you and to those email addresses that you've put into your applications in September. Unfortunately, we are unable to provide individual feedback. As mentioned, we're anticipating a very large number of applications, but what we will have in those letters will be a summary of the key points as to why you may not have been successful. So common themes that are coming up during that review process. So that's a very basic outline for you as to what this process looks like. Thank you. So this also will maybe help slightly illustrate those previous points. So once you've registered, this image on the left with the yellow circle, you will be able to log in to our AmplifyChange grants portal. So registration is just on the right, once that which you can see, and then yes, you'll need to enter your login details on the left. Once you've logged in, you'll be presented with this image on the right, and where we've got a yellow arrow and the yellow circle, you'll have the option to apply for a grant. So you'll need to click on that, and then you'll be able to open an application form for this round. But again, to reiterate, you must be registered to be able to log in to the platform to be able to apply for a grant. In terms of navigating the online portal, we do recommend that you save your progress regularly so that you're not losing anything in case you lose signal or your internet cuts or your electricity cuts. So please do keep hitting the save button frequently as you're working through that application form. We also ask you to review all sections before submitting. So is everything there? Have you put in as much detail as possible? Have you added, have you made sure that each section is final? You've taken out maybe some thoughts and questions that you might have in there in a draft. So every section is reviewed before you submit. And again, we do just ask that you don't leave the submission until the last minute. Great. So in terms of what is required to be able to submit your application, there are 4 elements that you will need to complete before submitting. So the first, as mentioned, is this online narrative application form where you answer questions around your context, your problem statement, what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and the impact that you're hoping to see with your advocacy focus project. So that is that online application form. We then ask you to upload a budget and a work plan, and this is known as the project planning workbook, or PPW for short, and that is that Excel document that has in your budget template and your work plan in the one document. Available on our website already, please download that and take a look through. But we ask you to copy your budgets and your work plan into our templates. They need to be in our templates, not in yours. And if they're not in our templates, or if your budget and work plan isn't uploaded with your application, we won't be able to conduct a full review. So we then also ask you to upload your organizational accounts for the past 2 years. So these can be audited accounts if you have them. If you don't have them, you're a newer organization, this could be a basic internal profit and loss statement, but we need some form of evidence to show the way that it is in the last 2 years. And you'll go, Liz.
I was going to say, if you are a new organisation, please just clearly state that you're a new organisation and you don't have that available. So as long as you're telling us that that's the reason why, then that you won't you still be able to apply. Sorry, Hannah.
No, great, thank you. And all of the guidance for completing these documents in the application form will help you understand what we want. And again, incomplete or missing documents is likely to mean that your application won't be reviewed. So please, that double check before you hit submit is really important. And just some important deadlines and timelines for you all. So the online portal is now open, has been open since Monday, and it will be open until the 16th of June 2025. Our opportunity grant calls, they're typically open for 4 to 6 weeks, but we have had all of the guidance and the documents all online for a significant amount of time before we opened the portal on Monday. We then anticipate the evaluation of the reviewing to take around 8 to 10 weeks. Again, huge volumes of applications we're anticipating to see here. So that 8 to 10 weeks is what we're hoping to get that review process finalized in. We're anticipating awarding 100 grants, and you will know by the end of September 2025 as to whether you have been successful. Great, I'm going to pass back to Liz for some hints and tips on crafting a strong application.
Thanks, Hannah. I just wanted to say that for those of you that are familiar with AmplifyChange, this is the first time that we're opening up this funding round to 3 years of funding. So you can extend the timeline if you choose to 3 years. It can be as little as 18 months, or it can be as long as 3 years. Okay. Thank you. So just some ideas about what to consider as you're developing your application. We want to hear a really clear problem statement. What's the issue that you're seeking to get some resolution on? Please be really clear. We do understand the context and the countries that you're working with. Lots of the reviewers are based in those settings. We do need some context, but really to articulate clearly the problem that you're seeking to address. Think about the project in terms of use some sort of SMART goals to as you're thinking through. What is it that how do you break it down? What's the objectives that you're really seeking to achieve, and are they specific? Are they measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound? Think about your activities. Maybe try and be creative with them, not just having lots of meetings and trainings and so on. What happens after you've done a training? What's the impact of that training? Think in terms of change. What change will that event, that activity bring about? We're very open to thinking about community engagement and policy dialogue, thinking creatively about where change happens, and would ask you to give some thought to that as well. Do consider the risks. You'll be asked to outline risks and your mitigations. Think of broadly in terms of risk. It's not just necessarily sort of political or geographical risks. They can be kind of economic risks. Look at the environment that we're all struggling in at the moment in terms of the sort of what's going on in the world. So please do consider some of those risks and let us know what you can do to make sure that the project can continue through some of those potential risks. AmplifyChange, we really welcome the opportunity to support your organizational capacity. So for new organizations, really think about what you need in terms of you as an organization. Maybe there's some training of your board, thinking through the governance structures a little bit more. Maybe there is some sort of more kind of policy development, or thinking through how you can be more appealing to other donors as well once you've received this funding and implemented the project. So we're really open to hear about some of those, to see some of those things in the budget, and think about for you to have the chance to think about funding some of those things. So you don't need to be entirely focused on delivering a project. We recognize that it's important for organizations like yours be there and to be sustained, and that's a really important part for amplified change. So Hannah kindly went through the priorities of amplified change. We spoke about some of the thematic areas. We're happy for you to just work on one of those thematic areas. If you want to work on multiple of them, that's also fine. We're not looking for you to tick all of them off. That's not necessarily. It's about a well-balanced project that has clear objectives that you're defining and that you want to see, where you want to see change in your communities. So you could just work on abortion, you could work on abortion and stigma, you could work on abortion and access. That's absolutely fine. It's for you to determine. We don't have a preference. Shortly, the next slide is the theory of change, and I'm just going to show you a little bit about how you might think about mapping your way through this theory of change. So broadly speaking, if you look at the bottom there, you can see the opportunity grant. We have these 3 other grant types as well. And what we believe is important in order to get to our ultimate vision at the top there of the full attainment of SRHR for all, is that we need to use certain strategies that will help us to reach that point of change. And amplified change have identified movement building is a very important one. We'll be also increasing the individual awareness of SRHR as a human right, looking at access to SRHR resources and information, and signposting to services, transforming social norms, so local beliefs that may be hindering progress towards that full attainment of SRHR, and then changes in policies and laws. So you may decide that you're just working on 1 or 2 of those areas, what we call our sort of outcome area, or you may find that your project, just by the nature of it, covers off a number of those. We will be asking you about how connected you are to the movement in your country, if indeed there is a movement, and what does that look like? How will your project connect with other work going on around the same sorts of issues? And then we have the 5 sort of impact areas, the 5 themes of gender-based violence, access to safe and legal abortion, elimination of stigma, which includes work around perhaps for sex workers or LGBTI organisations, and then access to comprehensive sexuality education and information for young people. Finally, access to SRHR services. So that's advocating for services, not providing services. That's maybe asking governments to have some budget allocation for SRHR services. And I think that would seem to be particularly important at the moment, where governments are going to be under a lot of stress and strain, particularly if they've previously received funding from the US. Hannah, would you mind just picking this one up?
Yeah, of course. So looking at our budget planning and justification, so a few tips here for you in terms of preparing your budgets. So this is that Excel document I mentioned that is available on our website. There is a tab on the document of guidance. Please do read this. It will answer a lot of your questions. So take a look at that guidance tab. There's also an example tab. Take a look at that one as well. This will also help field some of your questions. As mentioned, please do use these templates during the drafting of your proposal. If you are working with your own templates, that's fine, but please make sure to transfer that information into our Amplify Change templates. There are formula within the templates. Please don't change them. There are some rows that are locked, and they're locked for a reason. So if you're asking questions around why they're locked, it's because we need the formula to stay the same. There is a column on the budget called Budget Notes. We ask you to use this to justify all of the costs. So if you are putting in a budget line for a specific activity and you put in a large amount of money, for example, you say we're spending £10,000 on a community meeting, and that's all you have, that is not enough information for us. Please use that budget notes column to explain to us exactly how you got to that £10,000 figure. So room hire, maybe some consultants, some media, some refreshments, etc. Show us your workings out. And every bit of maths you've used to get to that figure, please put it in that budget notes column. No information, no amount of information is too much information for us to really understand. So please use that column and stay within the budget limit. So as mentioned, this is for up to 75,000 GBP and not a penny over. So please bear that in mind when you are putting together your budget for this proposal.
Just to say that the template is available on the website. You can download it. Anybody can download it and have a look if you're curious before you want to start an application form. So everything is available on our website. So I mentioned before about organizational strengthening and sustainability. This is really important for us. We want you to continue to exist as an organization beyond the life of this project, and we're keen for you to show us what's needed within your organization to be able to do that. So it's interesting to us to know if you've done similar projects like this before, and if not, why are you the right organization to do this now? Your people, your staff are your biggest asset, so please do tell us about them. If you're planning to recruit more, tell us what and why. It's a difficult time to retain staff, and thinking about how you're going to make sure that those staff can be retained. So yeah, we want to learn more about you as an organisation as well as the project that you're seeking to implement. There's just a note here again on sustainability. So we're asking organisations to really start to think a little bit about how these funds are going to help you leverage funding from other sources, not just AmplifyChange. And you'll see on the budget template that there's a locked line around having an audited account. So we're asking you to please put in to include the cost of audited accounts in this project, because we believe it gives organisations a really firm baseline upon which to go and seek funding from other donors. Perhaps you might want to consider a strategic plan or a fundraising plan. These are all things that we're very happy to see within the sort of organisational strengthening part. Looking to diversify funding, perhaps you've got creative ways that you might like to think about reaching out to corporates or sponsorship or potentially even government funding, or even how you might be earning income. We're unable, unfortunately, to invest in income generation activities for that to be a large part of the project. So please don't include that sort of investment in income generation. Unfortunately, AmplifyChange is funded by governments, and they don't allow us to fund that kind of work at the moment. So we're looking to see you demonstrate the impact, collect strong data so that you have an evidence base for future work, if that might well be part of your project. Advocacy, the best advocacy is always based in evidence. And building partnerships and collaboration is also something that we consider to be of great value, perhaps even an exchange visit with another organisation who's working on similar issues, perhaps in a different part of the country. All of these factors are around increasing the capacity of your organisation and creating a sort of learning approach, connecting with the movement more widely. So there's a few other points there, including staff training, using technology, online tools, etc. There may be some fees that you things like, I don't know, Zoom subscription, or those sorts of fees that you might want to include. And then in some cases, thinking a little bit in terms of the scale of the project, how easily it can be increased or decreased if it were to be replicated perhaps elsewhere. So again, a little bit about we spoke before about why organizations might be ineligible, and this is just to think about why applications might be unsuccessful. We get quite a lot of applications that talk a lot about awareness raising or sensitization. These are notoriously difficult to measure, very hard to know how successful you're being around that. So please if you're thinking about that kind of social norm change, I think, sometimes doing it on a large scale can be good, but also small scale can also be just as effective or even more so. So do think through what that social norm change is and how are you going to measure that and take that sort of advocacy forward beyond that. So yeah, broad terms like sensitization, capacity building, meetings, without a clear goal or a real understanding of what the impact or what the change is going to be, really make it very difficult to assess an application. When we receive applications from organisations that clearly are not connected to a wider movement, change doesn't happen in isolation. It's not one person that makes change. Being connected, linking to that broader movement is a really important part of really getting lasting change and carrying through the impact of your work. So we're aware that sometimes there is duplication within countries. We get projects that are very similar, working in similar areas, and that's something that we're keen to avoid. So part of that being connected to the movement is to ensure that duplication isn't happening. And we want to see what the potential for results are. Advocacy is difficult, it's challenging, particularly at the moment. Maybe the results are just a standstill, and that's fine. But making sure that your allies are still allies, they're not getting having their minds changed. This can be important work, but please be clear about what the results or what the impact of the project is likely to be. Have that clear in your mind before you start writing the application.
Great, thanks, Liz. So we're just going to share with you a couple of available resources that may help answer some of your questions. They may also help you with writing your application. So just to make you aware of what we currently have available, we have an application planning document. As mentioned, this is available online on our website. If you go to apply and to the opportunity grant page, you will find a downloadable guide to draft and refine your answers before you submit them on the online platform. So you can take this offline, you can fill it in, and you could transfer the information directly from this into our online system. We also have comprehensive guidance available online on applications, and this is broken down into section by section support. We have a standalone platform called AmplifyChange Learn. So you can get to that on www.amplifychangelearn.org. And this is a wonderful resource. This is lots of guidance written by our grantee partners, aimed at our grantee partners and applicants. Please do take a look at those wonderful how-to guides. There are some in there specifically on how to write a good application. So I recommend you taking a look at that as well. We also have a very detailed FAQ section, which you can find on our website. And also if you scroll down, if you're on the opportunity grant page at the very bottom, you can link to our FAQs. These feature commonly asked questions on eligibility, applications, budgeting, how to navigate our grants portal, how to general grants management if you're successful, reporting fund disbursement. So that's all there for you. And if you've exhausted those resources, and you still have a question that feels maybe a little more specific and you need an answer, you can reach out to us on this below email address, so inquire@amplifychange.org. Just a heads up on this, that email address is currently seeing large volumes of emails. Your email will be responded to as quickly as possible, but please bear with us, especially during these times where our rounds are open. The volume there is huge and the team are working through them as quickly as possible. So just send one email, they'll get to you as quickly as they can. And just so you can kind of have a visual here of what this looks like. So amplifychange.org is our website. If you head to apply, it should look like this. So you've got the yellow banner across the top, hit apply, and you'll come with this screen, which talks you through our 4 grant types. And it specifically at the moment lets you know that our opportunity round is open. The opportunity page looks like this. You'll be able to scroll down on the opportunity grant page, and everything that myself and Liz have mentioned today is there in text form for you, working through what we are looking to fund, duration. The webinar, as mentioned, will be there. I've seen there's lots of questions in the chat around country eligibility. All of that information is also on this same page. The approaches, the downloadable documents, everything is in that page for you if you scroll down. And as mentioned at the bottom of that page, links to our frequently asked questions. So if you are unsure if you meet our eligibility criteria in first instance, please do head to our FAQs and hopefully you'll be able to find your answer there. And this is a screen grab of what the Learn platform that I mentioned looks like. You know, we've said that this is a world of guidance written by advocates for advocates, but I am a big fan of this, and a big personal advocate for using this as a resource. And there are a number of guides that will talk you through how to write an application or how to maybe look at a budget, how to do a good work plan, etc., amongst a number of other more practical guides, you know, how to operate during power cuts, how to focus on, you know, write a really good proposal with an advocacy focus. So do take a look at this. Available in both English and French. And I'm sure the time now that everyone has been waiting for, as we move into our Q&A section, I can see that we have some of our wonderful colleagues, Katie and Eloise, have been behind the scenes already answering over 100 of these questions. So thank you both for that. That's no mean feat.
I might just interrupt because we have been working furiously answering questions. I'll just add before we start reading them out, because there are so many. There is a section on the website about, as Hannah showed, about this opportunity grant, and there is a list that you can see the eligible countries. So anyone asking, is this country eligible? Is this country eligible? We might not get to you, but it is really clear on the website. So please do have a look on the website. I might read out some of these questions because I know which ones I've answered and what themes have been done, and then you can take it in turns, maybe Hannah and Liz, to respond to those. Okay, so first one up, an organisation is asking, if we decide to apply for the opportunity grant, would that affect our eligibility or reduce our chances of success when applying for other grant types, such as the network grant? Also, would we be allowed to include grant making to grassroots organisations as one of the strategies for implementing the project under the opportunity grant?
I would urge you to look at the financial eligibility criteria for those two grants. It would be very unlikely that an organisation would be eligible to apply for both. So the network grant, a much bigger grant, has a different set of financial eligibility criteria. So I would urge you to look at the grant that fits you best in terms of that.
We have a couple of questions as well around consortiums. So asking, is it possible to apply as a consortium that was formed as a result of AmplifyChange Opportunity Grant, or can we apply in consortium with 2 to 3 grassroots level organisations? That's a yes.
Go ahead, Hannah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, you are more than welcome to. I would just bear in mind here the budget. And depending on the amount of organizations that are applying, looking at how much each organization is going to get and whether that is, you know, a good amount to be able to do the work with. So yes, you can apply as a consortium, but just be aware of the top end of the budget for this.
And the lead, just to say as well, that the lead organisation would be responsible for ensuring that the financial accounting was pulled together from each one of those organisations. So we would only be expecting one financial report. So there's a degree of kind of coordination and management of that sort of consortium that it may well, as Hannah rightly says, be a factor in the sort of costing.
We have quite a few questions around what do you mean by service delivery? So people are asking, what do you mean, what's allowed, what's not allowed? Contextually, could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
You want me to go?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so what we are not looking to fund, for example, would be an application working on menstrual health with £50,000 of the budget pushed into period products. For a number of reasons, we're an advocacy fund. I think Liz spoke quite a lot to this earlier, but getting funding for advocacy work isn't the easiest. There are other people funding service delivery. We believe in long-term sustainable change. And we believe that the way that we see that is through advocacy-focused projects, working on things like awareness raising, social norm change. So really changing kind of mindsets to then result in sustainable change. By service delivery, we are not looking to fund large volumes of products. We're not looking to fund large volumes of contraceptives, for example. Is there anything else on service delivery, Liz, that you think is important to mention on this one?
I think so. I think, yeah, the point is that, you know, providing sanitary pads or contraceptives for 3 years isn't a sustainable approach. So I think that's really the position that we're coming from.
Cool. Thank you. If our organisation is registered in only one eligible country, for example, Myanmar, can we still apply as the lead applicant for a multi-country project that includes partners registered in other eligible countries?
Eligible countries?
Yeah. And does the lead applicant need to be registered in every country where the project activities will be implemented? Or is registration in just one eligible country sufficient?
So you could be working in a consortium of where, well, none of the organisations need to be registered. I think Myanmar might be a little bit more specific in that sense, but in terms of what the government states, none of the organisations need to be registered. It's just about the sort of some of the, you know, it would be useful to hear that you consider some of the practicalities of how that kind of money would be moving about, and we'd certainly be asking that if you don't include it in the application, in the sort of due diligence phase of the project. So yes, no problem in principle, but I think I'd like to hear a bit more from you about how that would work. Yeah.
There was also a question in the Q&A around an organisation saying, if we allow organisations that are not registered, does that mean FCRA doesn't apply?
Yeah.
And FCRA is something very specific to India and some countries.
So in India, there's a piece of legislation where the government requires any foreign funding to go to specific organisations. Those organisations cannot pass that on. Foreign funding, and if this is the case of Myanmar, and the money is going into India, then no. Unfortunately, we can't be, you know, we can't break that regulation. That's a government regulation. We have a reputation and an obligation to the organisations that we're currently funding. So we can't break law effectively by allowing that to happen. So India presents a really difficult case for us at the moment, and Bangladesh now to some degree as well has followed suit. So it is very difficult, and we really appreciate that, you know, this particularly for this funding round, we want to be funding a lot more small grassroots organisations in those countries. And this particular piece of government legislation is really hindering our ability to do that. If anybody has any suggestions or ideas of how we can work around that, very happy to within the law. But we, you know, after years of trying, haven't been able to do that yet. So we're hopeful that we will be able to get some funding into India and into organisations that have FCRA. But at the moment we don't see another way around that in this case. So fiscal sponsorship isn't an option, unfortunately, in India and Bangladesh. For other countries, that's absolutely fine, and I'm incredibly sorry about that. But it's unfortunately part of the challenges that we're seeking to overcome.
Just to add to that, Liz, just because I've quickly looked at the Q&A and there's quite a few questions around from India-based organizations. Just to reiterate, if you do have suggestions on this, please put, and you are submitting an application, please do include your ideas as to receiving funding in as much detail as possible in your application. So if you think there is a way that we can do this and you can receive that funding legally, please do give us as much information as possible, because that will really help with our decision making. I think just wanted to emphasize that because there are some ideas coming through in the Q&A, but please put all of that in your application for us.
There are a couple of questions asking, can a for-profit private organisation or a for-profit social enterprise apply for this type of funding?
Hannah, do you want to answer this? Are you no? I think so. Yes, in theory they can. We're particularly interested in you know, the more sort of social enterprise. We don't really want organisations to be making a profit necessarily off this money, but I think it's really about what it is that what the project is. I think if it's community focused and it's very much around improving the SRHR, then we're happy to have a look at it for sure.
There's a question here around the use of AI. So saying the project ideas are entirely original, but English is not our first language. Therefore, I'd like to understand the extent to which using AI tools for language editing and refinement would be acceptable in the application.
We recognise that by only having 2 languages available, that there's not a level playing field. So the easy answer is yes, you can use AI to refine to check language. We're not looking at a high quality, grammatically correct application. We want to hear your voice. We want it to sound like you. We want it to be authentic. So we don't want it to be written by AI. If it's just some help with language translation, etc., that's fine. But it's fairly easy. Having reviewed the number of applications that we reviewed, it's quite straightforward to see if the whole thing has been written by AI. If you're just using it for a little bit of refinement and checking, then please use the tools that you have available.
I believe there's also a question in the application form around whether you have used AI as part of your application. And that's not there in any way to affect the way that we review them. It's just for us to be able to start understanding how it's being used. And I think to reiterate Liz's points, it's us, we only work in these 2 languages and recognize that these aren't the languages of most of the people on this call. So if that's useful to you, use it.
Someone's asking for Pakistan, does a similar certificate such as the FCRA as required in India, is that also required to receive funds for Pakistan? I can't recall.
My sense is that it isn't quite the same requirement as India, unless that's changed. I know there's been some issues recently with the government blocking registrations and new registrations and things. As far as I'm aware, you can still apply as an unregistered organisation in Pakistan.
Is it okay to work in collaboration with an international organisation?
I think we'd be if you were working. It depends what that collaboration is. To be honest, we're not. AmplifyChange is an organisation that's really seeking to get funding to grassroots organisations. Okay, often these international organisations have, are trying to sustain also an office elsewhere, and we don't want that money to get redirected into there. If they're coming in and providing you with a bunch of technical support or advice for the project, then that would seem to be, that would be okay. We'd welcome that opportunity for you to learn and grow as an organisation. So if it's from that sort of perspective, then okay. But I think, a sizable amount of the budget going to an international organisation probably won't be that well received.
There's been a few questions around the use of fiscal sponsors for organisations that aren't registered, and there's one quite specific one here saying they're sharing questions from an MHM collective WhatsApp group in India where members haven't been able to join in. But they say, if we're using a fiscal sponsor, will the sponsor be accountable for the financial reporting? What's a good way to divide roles between them and us? Will being unregistered and working through a fiscal sponsor affect how our proposal is scored or evaluated? We have been doing unregistered but significant work, don't have any audited statements to show, but media articles / coverage and reports. Would not having any financial audits reduce our chances? Yeah.
So in the specific case of India, you can't, there is a part of this difficult legislation means that money can't move from a fiscal host from one organisation to another if it's come from outside the country. So unfortunately, fiscal hosting in India and Bangladesh is not allowed by the government. For other countries, that's absolutely fine. We're not gonna, the arrangement that you have with the fiscal host needs to be appropriate for you as an organisation. That who does the financial reporting, who, that's a whole conversation that we have the whole spectrum within the grants that we have at the moment. So that's something that you need to work out yourselves. But it may be that the money just comes in and they pass it on to you in countries where that's allowed. It may be that they distributing it to you in smaller amounts, and that they're taking care of the financial reporting. We are aware that fiscal hosts are likely to charge for those sorts of services, so please include those in your budget. And that's really something to be thinking about right from the very beginning if you're thinking about going down the route of a fiscal host, because it can have quite a significant impact on budgets if it's not considered in the first instance. So hopefully I've answered kind of two separate groups of question there.
Can a big organisation with a budget greater than £200,000 be a sub-partner to a grassroots organisation?
Yes, they could, yeah.
Someone here is asking, please specify which sector-based organisations are eligible to apply, along with the corresponding industries or sectors.
I would urge them to go onto our website and have a look. There's a list of the sorts of organisations that would be eligible under AmplifyChange. So we for certain we wouldn't be funding any government organisations. Broadly speaking, most others are allowed. I think it really needs to be looking at, partnering and ensuring that the sort of funding is reaching grassroots organisations. So that's the bottom line as far as we're concerned. So yeah, really, the mechanism is just one that needs to be clearly explained if it varies from the norm.
Someone's asking, at what time on the 16th of June is the deadline? I would urge you not to leave it until the 16th of June. We're expecting this round to be so busy, such high demand, that ideally, the 16th of June is a Monday and we will be working UK hours. But if you could aim to finalise your applications and submit them by the Friday, that would be best, because if there are any problems, any connection issues or network issues, it'll be difficult for our team to be able to get back to you and answer you in time for the deadline. So please don't leave it until the 16th. But if you do, I think there won't be any online support after 5 p.m. UK time. So normally we close it then. Yeah.
Yeah, just to reiterate that point again, please do get it in. Also, the system itself, is challenged by the volume of applications. So we don't want you to be to do all this work and be disappointed. We really do want to hear from you. We really do want to look at your application. So please do try and get it in earlier than the 16th.
We've had a few questions around the distribution of the roughly 100 grants that we're going to be awarding in this grant cycle. People asking, is it based on regions, or do we have a limit on number of grants per country or per city, geographical spread, that sort of thing?
No, we have not to be missed countries. If you look on our website and you look up not to be missed countries, you'll find a list of countries that we will give during the moderation process, where we give some degree of preference to. However, if your country isn't on that list, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't get through. We will try and put a cap on the number of countries, the number of applicants from any one country that hasn't been decided upon yet, so that we don't get, an unbalanced portfolio and a sort of tilting towards specific geographical areas. We're also aware that, some countries have a much more developed sort of civil society than others, and we know that we're going to get more applications from those countries, but we do try and balance it out in the moderation. So if you're from a country that requires the development of the infrastructure a bit more, then please do apply. Equally, if you're coming from a country with a high number of NGOs, competition is going to be stiffer. So please bring your best game, I guess.
Must organisational strengthening be a part of the proposal? And if so, on average, what percentage of the budget goes to this element? And what sort of things can organisations include as part of organisational strengthening, I suppose?
I would love you to include some organizational strengthening in your budget. So we actually allow up to 40%, so 40% of the budget to be allocated to organizational strengthening. And for a number of reasons, but we're really looking at funding these kind of new emerging organizations who may need to invest in their own organizations to be able to sustain themselves. So within that organizational strengthening budget, it would be great to see, things around certain staff trainings. I think there's actually a set line in there for an audit. So if you don't have audited accounts, we can use this money, or we expect you to use some of this money to be able to audit your organization. But anything that you think builds the capacity of your team, of your organization, any gaps in your own knowledge, in your own understanding, in your own systems that you think you need to put in place to be able to be a sustainable organization long past the life of this amount of funding would be great. So I know it's easy to push as much as you like into your activities, and I understand that, but what we need, or what we'd like to see, is a good amount allocated to strengthening and sustaining your own organization. So a plea from me there to use that section and reflect, use this as a time to think, what do we need as a small organization? What will help us? And this is an opportunity to really do that. So please do use that.
I think there were some questions, on multiple applications and things. I think in this funding round, you can submit more than one application if you have a couple of good ideas. It's unlikely that you will be funded for more than one application, but if you can't decide which one to submit, you can submit both and we'll review both. You would, as I say, be unlikely to receive funding for both. And for those of you that already have Amplified Change grants, it's possible to apply. You can apply for this grant as long as you meet the eligibility criteria. If you no longer meet the eligibility criteria, then please look out for the next level of funding, which would be the strengthening grant, which is likely to open next year, 2026.
Is the use of digital health platforms and mobile-based community engagement tools acceptable within the scope of advocacy-focused projects?
Yes, if you think that that is the best way to see change in your context, convince us, write exactly why those are needed in your application. To clarify, what we wouldn't really want to see would be an application with huge amounts of budget allocated to buying lots of mobile phones or buying lots of computers. But if you're looking at doing kind of e-health or digital advocacy focused work, that would be a acceptable application.
As an organisation that works on pleasure-based approach to SRHR, we have applied before, but we are still young. Is this call open to organisations that are still developing their structures and are yet to develop a strategic plan? And can we budget in line? So basically, can we put some budget in for organising or creating our strategic plan?
That feels like a wonderful use of your organizational strengthening budget. So yes, you can. And that development of a strategic plan would be a really good use of that funding.
And we have lots of resources to help you in that process as well. So,
can a for-profit private organisation apply that works specifically in SRHR and advocacy in an eligible country?
Yes, you can apply, and we really want to be understanding that for-profit element and what that means for you as an organisation. So yeah, but please position it well.
There's quite a few repetitions of questions, quite a lot on.
I've got quite a couple here just around whether people can apply for less than the 75,000. Just to clarify, yes, you can. The 75,000 is the top end, but if your project sits below that, or you feel there's a lesser amount of money that you can manage, please do apply for that specific amount, but no more than 75,000.
Okay. Right, I think I'm a little conscious of time. I think we've probably done a reasonable job with the questions, Eloise.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. Again, please refer to all of this information. Nothing that we've said really is not on the website. So please refer to the website. This session has been recorded and will go up on the on our website. You'll be informed about that. So please do look on there for any additional information, and you can contact us sooner rather than later if you have any questions. So I think suffice to say that we wish you all the very best with the development of your project, and making sure that it's focused on SRHR, focused on advocacy, focused on making impactful change. We really want to hear the voices of grassroots organisations and the change that you want to see in your communities, and to really do your best to communicate that to us so that we can listen and hear the kind of work that you're wanting to be resourced. Even if you're unsuccessful, by submitting an application, you're enabling us to go back to our donors and say, look at the demand, look at how people, this is the sort of work that they want to do. So it is important. We can pass on your messages and your intentions to donors as well. So really appreciate you listening today and coming on, and go register now if you're not already registered. Check out the eligibility criteria and get cracking on that application. We look forward to receiving them. Thank you.